Let's do that.
Let's do that, right? Okay. So, welcome to the seventh webinar organized by JBS. The topic of today's webinar is Decoding Leadership the Mahabharata Way. Today, we have with us Professor Asha Kaul and Professor Sanjay Verma, both from IIM Ahmedabad. I, Dr. Sriram Purankar, would like to read a brief introduction of both our guests for the webinar. Professor Asha Kaul is a professor in the communication area in IIM Ahmedabad. She's obtained her doctorate in stylistics from Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur in 1990. She's an author of Effective Business Communication, published 2000, The Effective Presentation, uh, Talk Your Way to Success, 2005, Business Communication, second edition, published 2009, co-author of books, Corporate Reputation Decoded, published 2014, Corporate Communications in the Digital Era, Strategies for Managing Reputation, and co-editor of two books, Management Communications, Trends and Strategies, published 2006, New Paradigms for Gender Inclusivity, published in 2013. She has worked on multiple cases on corporate reputation and specific areas of corporate reputation as managing stakeholder, crisis, CSR, etc. She has published in international journals and presented papers at national and international conferences. Her current research areas include genderlect, politeness, managerial, corporate, and digital communication. Currently, she is working on Indian cases to comprehend the intricacies involved in corporate decision making for enhancing reputation. She is the recipient of many awards. She was awarded the citation for 100 most dedicated professors in 2019. Professor Indira Parikh, 50 Women in Education Leaders by World Education Congress in 2018. She has been recognized as one of the 50 Indian management thinkers who had made an impact on the theory of management and practice in the year 2015. She has won the AP Chaudappa Memorial Award for Excellence in Communication in Academic Sector for year 2014-15. She was awarded the prize for being one of the best-selling authors of Prentice Hall of India for the book Business Communication Second Edition. Currently, she is serving as an independent director on the board of Oil India Limited and is the chairperson of CSR and NR committees. She is also on the academic council of various institutes. And now on to bio of Professor Sanjay Verma. Professor Sanjay Verma is a fellow from IIM Calcutta, Information Systems and Operations Research. Professor Sanjay Verma is a member of Information Systems area at IIM Ahmedabad. He is also the secondary member of Marketing and Business Policy areas. His teaching interests are in management information systems, customer relationship management, knowledge management, business intelligence analytics, with applications in marketing and operations. He engages in work related to knowledge management, enterprise resource planning, e-governance, customer relationship management, performance management, HR strategy, and operations management. He's also worked in developing algorithms for multiple machine scheduling and project scheduling problems, simulations as well, on developing decision support systems in marketing. Professor Verma is on the board of Punjab National Bank. He's also served as an independent director nominated by Government of India on the board of Punjab and Sindh Bank. In these banks, he's been actively involved in developing, implementing overall as well as functional strategies of the bank. At IMA, he has served as the chairperson of Center for E-Governance and has chaired IT services twice. Professor Verma has been on various committees on IT-related issues associated with organizations such as Indian Oil, Supreme Court, Gandhi Ashram Sabarmati, Gujarat Urja Vikas Nigam, Gujarat Mineral Development Corporation, etc. He is also on the member of various committees and other educational institutions. Professor Verma started his career in Modern Suitings Limited, Alwar, in the field of sales and marketing. After taking to academics, he has taught at IMS Bikaner and Exam Bhubaneswar. He has published papers and participated in conferences both in India and abroad. Professor Verma has been involved in teaching and consulting with various organizations engaged in the field of retail, health, insurance, infrastructure, education, BPO, and social sector. Welcome to this webinar, Professor Asha Kaul and Professor Sanjay Verma. We would now like to hear from you.
Thank you so much, Sriram, for that introduction. So I think with that we can get started. So we are really getting excited about this webinar because I can see, we will be getting a lot of interactions, question, answers, where all the participants are concerned, and we are really, really looking forward to that. So let's begin. Now, this is part of a larger module that I do over here at IME, which is teaching leadership through literature. The first thing I'd like to discuss is, why do we decide to pick up literature and why not any autobiography and why do we want to really teach leadership through literature? So just a couple of quick points and then we get into Mahabharata. So one is, if you want to take a look at an autobiography of a leader or you want to take a look at a biography of a leader, what normally happens is it is presented in a perspective which is one directional. It's not multi-directional. So when it is one directional, what normally happens is you start looking at the follies or the trials or the tribulations where that person is concerned, but you're not able to understand what is it that created this leader. So that's one of the reasons why we decided we would not like to go ahead with autobiographies or biographies and we'd like to pick up literary texts. So now when we decide to pick up literary texts and we're talking about leadership, now which text do you think would be much better than our Mahabharata, which deals with all kinds of issues related to leadership? Now, if you take a look at Mahabharata, it's been said where Mahabharata is concerned, whatever is happening in Mahabharata is happening outside. Whatever is not there in the outside world, you would not have in Mahabharata as well. And if you want to take a look at a third dimension, even what you think should comprise leadership, you would just think of that word and keep it with yourself. So that at the end of our session today, you would realize that that point has been discussed. And it's not that I'm a magician or Sanjay is a magician or we know what's going on in your mind, but it's just that anything that's happening in the world or anything that's happening in your thoughts is also there in Mahabharata. Now, you might as well ask us, if you're talking about Mahabharata, why not Ramayana? Well, Ramayana is a kavya and Mahabharata is itihas. Ramayana has only 24,000 shlokas, but Mahabharata has 100,000 shlokas. It's not that when it was written it had 100,000. When it was written by Vyas, it had only 8,800, and gradually in two other iterations it went up to that number. But without getting caught into the numbers of shlokas, Mahabharata helps you understand a lot of complexities where life is concerned. Life is not simple. When you start with life, you realize there's so many complexities, uncertainties, insecurity.
Yeah.
So when you talk about Mahabharata, it helps you develop a perspective. Now, remember one thing, when we talk about, I'm sorry, I'm looking at my watch because there's a lot that we need to cover and I need to be a little fast. So I'm looking at my watch. So Sanjay, just give me 2 or 3 minutes more and then I start on to the characters. So when we start taking a look at Mahabharata, there are many questions that come to the mind. And it's this interplay of questions which more or less replicates what life is all about. So some of the questions, that come to the mind is, what is the importance of principles versus pragmatism? What are ideals? What is reality? What are the compromises that a person has to make? Is it necessary that you just carry on with actions without giving it a thought? Or is it that you are only caught up in reality? What do you do when your approach is very principled and it kind of conflicts with reality? Together with that, there are many other questions as, how do you really go ahead with sense making? What is it that you need to do when you need to, this time, what is your identity? How do you really go ahead with identity? What is consciousness? What is the conflict between duties and obligations? So all these are questions that seem to be answered where Mahabharata is concerned. Even if you think that they are not being answered, they help you develop a perspective. To remember that when we're talking about developing a perspective, it helps you to operate in just the right kind of manner where the context is concerned. The same context is not going to be replicated in today's world as it happened during the time of Mahabharata. But if your perspective is right and questions of a similar sort arise in your day-to-day life, it is easier for you to then apply your perspective to the right context. It's very interesting where Mahabharata is concerned. Though it is steeped into the Hindu tradition. What was the Hindu tradition about? Purushar. which is human existence. So when you talk about human existence, it is based on four pillars. Earth, which is economic activity. Then you have calm, which is senses, pleasures that are there. Then you have moksha, which is nirvana, and you have dharma. Dharma should have come earlier. Dharma, which is, your rights, duties, obligations. They could be steeped in society or they may not be steeped in society. So Mahabharata is a true rendering where Purusharth or human existence is concerned. So now some things that I'd just like to draw your attention to so that we can carry on in just the right kind of way. What we would be doing is we would only have time to discuss 6 characters, and we try to pick up characters which would have some kind of conflict within them, and we are going to assess those characters. Now, while we assess those characters, we are not getting into traditional leadership frameworks. No, we are trying to understand them from more of a humanistic perspective. We'll try to bring in philosophy to as great an extent as possible. We would be talking about leadership that is required, and we would be talking about the dilemmas that are there. At the end of the session, we try to construct a model, if that is possible, and leave you with that model. And I repeat, it's not one of those seminal leadership models. It's a model that is typical to Mahabharata. It's a model that's typical to your life, to my life. It's a model that will help us navigate through life, which is the right kind of manner. So with that, any questions, any doubts? So with that, let's begin. So here I would like to share my screen right now with you all. Is it visible? So these are the 6 characters that we would be dealing with. So I would like to begin with Bhishma Pitama. Now it's very interesting. Whenever you think of Bhishma, right, the first thought that comes to the mind is, okay, well, he's Bhishma, and the word that is associated with him is Bhishma Pitama. Bhishma means the feared wow or the feared one, and Pitama refers to as father. Now, I wonder who gave him that name. Because if we start taking a look at all that happened, during his life, you would realize, everything was not hunky-dory, right? And still there's a lot of respect that's accorded to him. So I would like to focus on 3 stories from his life. The first story that comes to my mind is that when he decided to take that vow, the fearsome vow that he took for his father. And the vow was that he would never ascend the throne, or he would never get married. Well, it sounds, he's a kind of person who's self-sacrificing. What comes to my mind is what Dostoevsky said, where suffering is concerned. And he said, there's only one thing that I'm scared of, not to be worthy of my sufferings. What a laugh. What a laugh when it comes to Bhishma Pitama. So he sacrificed and he got himself elevated to that stature to be able to do other, as I would look upon them, wrongs. He decided he would go and he would abduct 3 women. Amba, Ambika, Ambalika. He abducts the 3 women, but take a look. He doesn't abduct them for himself. He abducts them for the Hastinapur crown. Does that make his responsibility less? Thank God we didn't have the Me Too movement at that time. The third story that comes to my mind is when Draupadi's Chir Haran is happening in the court. Not once does he raise his voice. All that he is doing at that time is debating on the legality of that whole issue. Now, a man who has, and of course there are many other wrongs, and if you just carry on, then why is it that we revere him as Bhishma Pitama? It's important for us to understand his traits. He was a person who, whatever he did, he was self-effacing. When we talk about that, he did nothing for himself. He sacrificed his life. And probably that's one of the reasons why we are willing to forgive him all his follies. Probably that's the reason why Mahatma Gandhi also, we are willing to forgive him for his follies. Now, you might as well ask me what are the follies. The major folly is today, the partition that had happened, whatever had happened, we still do not attribute responsibility to Mahatma Gandhi and we still refer to him as Mahatma. He was not very good with his family and still we say he was a Mahatma and he is an exemplar. So are we saying, where Bhishma Pitama is concerned, if you come and you sacrifice yourself, you sacrifice your personal identity for the larger good, so a leader, I very much doubt. So a doubt, I don't think that is what helps you in becoming a leader. So you take also a look, where Bhishma Pitama is concerned, to the link of Mahabharata with the current business. What was he trying to do? If you take a look, he was trying to bring about a merger by acquisition of the three women. I mean, it sounds crazy, but that's how it is. But what we have to keep in mind, leadership is a four-score win. When you talk about it being a four-score win, what are we really talking about? We are talking about leadership being perched on four legs. And what are those four legs? Those four legs are self, family, society, and your career. If you sacrifice the self, and that's exactly what Bhishma Pitama did, he sacrificed himself, one leg of the chair is totally broken. Does it help you to retain balance? I'm not so sure. So the compromises that you make, they have to be based on a more pragmatic stand. It's good to have ideals. It's good to have ideals. Because in life, if you don't have ideals, how would you really be able to succeed? But having ideals in themselves does not help you to move ahead with reality. It's something like combining, as Victor Hugo rightly said, it's something like combining water with oil. The two will never mix. They will be layered. So similarly, what you need to do is you need to be sure when you're trying to bring about this combination between ideals and reality. Move, keep your feet on the ground, but keep your eyes on the stars. Search for the stars. And as you traverse in your path to touch the stars, your feet are well grounded on reality, in reality. What Bhishma did before I, asked Sanjay to talk about someone else from a rival clan. What he did? Like Nietzsche, he said, this is my way. What is yours? Come on, buddy. You are there at the helm of affairs. You cannot say this is my way, what is yours? This is our way, and this is how we need to proceed. So, Sartre said that man is condemned to be free, and freedom necessarily means making choices. This is your existential approach. You are thrown in this world. All of us are. Now you have to make choices. How do you make your choices? Revive yourself. That's the first R of our leadership model. But let's take a look at a person in the rival clan. Now, I don't know, Sanjay, would you like to tell us more about the rival clan, or would you like to say they are all part of the same family?
Asha and all friends, if you see Yudhishthir, and maybe at some point of time you compare him to other characters, I would say, he stands completely apart, very, very, very different. In fact, he is called Dharmraj. And why is that? There are so many stories when so many times he proves, he shows why is it called Dharmraj. Now, what is meaning of dharma? It's important for us to understand what dharma is. Is dharma a goal or is dharma something different? If you see different literature, if you see different religions, dharma would be defined in multiple ways. In Hinduism, it's about the rights, about the law, about the conduct, the virtues, the duties. Actually, it is the way to live. It's something to hold, something to wear, put on. When a person is falling, it's dharma that saves the person, that holds the person. Of course, there are many more interpretations of dharma also. He is called Dharmraj because he understands what is to be done in that situation as per the dharma or as per the law, which if you relate it to the today's management system, if you compare, he is the person who follows standard operating procedures. For him, SOPs are important, nothing else, nothing else. Just think, he was Samrat, and he's invited by Hastinapur for the purpose of gambling. Everyone advises, don't go, there'll be something wrong there. He says, as a Kshatriya, it's my job, I have to go. And he goes there. And we all know how he was, in a way, incited to play. And initially, he wins also. And then slowly, he starts losing. He starts losing everything, his kingdom. And then the question is asked, or actually, he's advised that he should get up now. Shakuni says, Dharmraj, Dharmraj, you still have something left. Don't you have rights over your brothers? He says, of course, I have right on my brothers. Adhikar. Adhikar is the word that would be proper here. And he puts Sahadev and loses, and Nakul. And one after the other, he loses all brothers. He loses himself also. Now he says, now that I have lost everything, now can I get up? And he leaves. Everyone is advising Dronacharya, Bhishma, Vidur. Everyone is telling him, get up now. Shakuni comes again and says, are you proud of what you have done? He says, yes, I am proud of what I have done. He has lost his brothers. He has lost himself. Yet he says he is proud of what he has done. And so Shakuni traps him again and says, then you have that pride to gamble. And he gambles his pride. He gambles and loses his wife also. And there is an interesting discussion that happens. Did he have right to lose his brothers, or actually before that, to put them as pawns in the gamble, and his wife? He says, if I have to play again, I would say that is as per the dharma. He loses and loses, yet he keeps on following what he thinks as his dharma. Now, when we say, and I will give you one more example. Just before the war, the rules are to be set, and the two parties meet. Shakuni again starts a discussion. The chief of Pandava's army is none other than Draupadi's sister, we know, Shikhandi. And he says, he knows very well, everyone knows very well that only Shikhandi can kill Bhishma. And Bhishma is not defeated, Kauravas are invincible. Shakuni again traps him. He says, ladies, women cannot participate in war. And Yudhishthir says, that's the dharma. He knows that if he accepts this condition, they are going to lose. He accepts that also. So as a follower of dharma, Yudhishthir is someone who is to be recognized. But more important than dharma, dharma is also justice, nyaya. I will give you a very interesting incident, and that we all know. When the four Pandavas go near a pond to fetch water, and they are questioned by Yaksh, and they can't answer the question properly. And then Yudhishthir goes looking for them, and he finds Yaksh again. And Yaksh asks him, Yaksh actually tells him that he has killed all the brothers because he warned them not to drink water, but water is poisonous, but they still did not follow his advice, and now they are dead. And he says, he will allow Yudhishthir to take water if he can answer questions. Those questions you can find, maybe there are a variety of questions. There are no standard 18 questions I have found. But the questions are very interesting, no doubt about that. Whichever version of questions you take. For example, one of the questions is, what is the most valuable possession? Yudhishthir says, knowledge. What is the greatest happiness? Yudhishthir says, contentment. Some versions may have even more tricky questions. For example, as a first question, who makes the sun rise and ascends in the skies? Anyways, so Yudhishthir answers all these questions, and the Yaksha is happy. Yaksha says, I can give life to one of your brother. Whose life do you want? And Dhamra says, if you will, please do that for Nakul. He's asked, why Nakul? You could have chosen any of your brothers, you could have chosen Bhim, you could have chosen Arjun. Yudhishthir says, three of us are children of Kunti. Those two are children of Madri. It would be improper if I had chosen one of mine. If one child of Kunti would be alive, so should be one of Madri. He doesn't favor his own brothers. Brothers means they considered all of them as brothers, but in that situation where he had to make a choice, he goes for a tough choice. Not that he didn't reach near the boundary. And I will tell you two situations. One, all of us are aware, when Ashwatthama is announced dead, and Bhim says, Ashwatthama mara gaya, and the sentence is again different places, Manushya nahi hati. And he also, Yudhishthir is asked, he also says, yeah, I have heard Ashwatthama mara gaya, pata nahi Manushya ya hati. He says that, which is truth, which is of course suppressed by the noises of Shank, by Krishna and other people. He knew, but he, what he says is true. There is another situation also. At some point of time, in that situation I will discuss later, but I will just a part of that. So Yudhishthira starts going for Hastinapur. This is the second day of war. Yudhishthira is now taking his chariot towards Hastinapur along with his army, and Bhishma follows and he stops his way. And Bhishma asks, when we have decided that the war will be in Kurukshetra, why are you going toward Hastinapur? He says, I am not attacking Hastinapur. He says, but you are moving there. For what purpose do you go to Hastinapur? He says, who told you I have gone to attack? I am going to attack Hastinapur. Yudhishthira asks Bhishma, who told you? He says, I have heard this. Yudhishthira says, maybe Krishna said this, maybe someone else. I never said this. He knew that that was a lie that would be spread, and he laughs. That was his boundary. So Yudhishthira, a person who has very loose, and in Hindi, if you listen to Mahabharata, if you read it, the word would be maryada. Maryada. Maryada is used as boundary. Maryada is also used as capacity, capabilities. Maryada is used interchangeably, as you will see. Yudhishthira, a person with maryada in both the ways. A person who follows justice, who follows rules. Let's see someone else who can be other person.
So Sanjay, if I may quickly, go ahead, it's very interesting. Now, where Yudhishthira is concerned, especially when you started, because you started with that example of gambling. So Kovind said something, if the ladder is not leaning against the right wall, every step we take just gets us to the wrong place faster. And every time I think about Yudhishthira, the entire Mahabharata is because Draupadi kept her hair open. In India, we women love to open our hair, when there's a war or something. Take a look at Sita, she also doesn't tie her hair. So we take a vow on the hair. Now that's exactly what happened, where Yudhishthira is also concerned. His ladder was not leaning against the right wall. So the second R that emerges is re-examine. Because our life is full of rigidity, but then what we have to do is we have to ensure what should be the right combination between rigidity and flexibility. Are we caught up in societal rules, societal obligations, societal norms? But I really don't think all that, Yudhishthira was doing, or Yudhishthira was, the way he was moving ahead, he would have been a success without Krishna. Krishna was the person who led them to success. Now, if I may, Krishna was one person, and that's one of the reasons why I love him. If we look at it at the broad level, and we go strictly by the words, he didn't have any rules, he didn't have any regulations which bound him. He was not led by ideals, if I may say so. I know it's extremely controversial statement that I'm making. He was not a principled person. He did whatever he thought was right. In fact, this is what sets Krishna apart. Apart from the rest of the people, he knew what he was doing. He had his principles, but then he knew when should he be pragmatic. Just a couple of instances. He took a vow that he would only be a charioteer to Arjun. But when Arjun was dilly-dallying, right, and his hands were shaking and he reached winters, he's not bound by the vows that he takes, just like Bhishma Pitama. He is able to think cogently and understand what is the context in which he needs to plug in the context. He was a pragmatician to the core. He knew how to make choices. He knew what was right. He knew what was wrong. And he had no compunctions about coming to the fore for making that statement. He knew he was using Arjun as an instrument for the final end. He did not show his Vishwarup to anyone, but Arjun was one person. Thrice in Mahabharata, he shows his Vishwarup. He shows his Vishwarup to Arjun because he wants Arjun to be convinced that whatever he's been doing, it's all just right. So, Sanjay, are there any other stories that you would like to add on? Because if Krishna is concerned, he's not a rigid person like a Yudhishthira. He's
yes, Asha. There are actually, if you realize, Krishna doesn't feel bad even when he has to run away and out from battlefield. He's perfectly fine. He differentiates between battles and wars. If you have read, you may know of a story where there is a Rakshas who incites him to fight, and that Rakshas has a boon that he can only be burned. And Krishna tells Rukmani and Arjun, what is the point of fighting when we can anyway solve the problem. Focus on the problem, not how you are going to solve the problem. And Krishna starts running towards a cave, and that Rakshas is following him, and he enters the cave, and Krishna is wearing yellow cloth, and the Rishi, I think Markandeya, is sleeping in the cave, for years. Actually, I think he's in yoga samadhi. So the Rakshas comes and he kicks the Rishi. Rishi gets up and looks at that Rakshas. And the Rakshas just turns into ash. And then he tells, why should I fight? Why should I fight when without fighting I can do my job? But there is one more story which is similar, and that's where I will tell you how good a planner Krishna was. If he were to play chess, he would be the best chess player ever, I would say. And I will tell you how. So this is first day of Mahabharata war is over, and 1 lakh army men of Pandavas have been killed by Kauravas, especially Bhishma. So they say that, somehow we have to kill Duryodhan, because Bhishma no one can kill. How to kill Duryodhan? Because Duryodhan is protected by Bhishma and Dronacharya and Gandhar Raj. These 3 people are protecting, and Ashwatthama. 4 people are protecting Duryodhan. There is no way they can reach Duryodhan, who is in the center of the army. So now Krishna plays his game, and that's where I was referring to Yudhishthira. So he says, somehow take Bhishma away. How to take Bhishma away? So he takes Bhishma away. So Bhima goes to fight with Ashwatthama. Now Bhima goes to fight with Ashwatthama. Dronacharya will come to save Ashwatthama. When Dronacharya comes to save Ashwatthama, Bhim is withdrawn from there, and Arjun is put into fight with Dronacharya. So now Dronacharya is away from Duryodhan. Now Bhim, while fighting with someone, I'm just forgetting name, with Dushashan. Dushashan, who is an idiot as per the story, Bhim tells Dushashan that let's kill him, and anyways Yudhishthira will win over Hastinapur in few minutes because he has gone to attack Hastinapur. Dushashan runs away from there and immediately tells this to Duryodhan. Now Duryodhan now tells Bhishma, you go and save Hastinapur. So Bhishma has to reluctantly go toward Hastinapur. Bhishma is taken away. Dronacharya is taken away. These 2 are away. Now Duryodhan is with Gandhar Raj. And now Bhishma goes to, Bhim goes to attack Duryodhan. And there is a duel. Bhim would have nearly killed Duryodhan on the second day itself. Now the point is how nicely he makes his move one after the other. Such was the genius of Krishna. Such a nice planner. So
Sanjay, I would like to add on something, if I may. So,
yes, Asha,
what comes to my mind is, since we thought we'd link it to corporate world games people play, Eric Byrne.
Yes.
Sometimes I think Krishna probably would have read that book.
Yeah.
And, the games that, he played throughout Mahabharata, but over to you. So this thought came to my mind, and I just thought I'd like to share it with you.
One more characteristic of Krishna, Asha, I would share. Those of you who are by chance have visited Ahmedabad and may not have, but so let me share. And I will connect it to the current political scenario also. Asha, if you may permit.
Please.
If you go to some shop or other, in many shops you will find photograph of that shopkeeper with Modi. Asha, if you remember, Bhavnagari shop has photo of that shopkeeper with Modi. Yes. I go to a homeopathy doctor, he has photograph of himself and Modi. And you will see this in multiple situations.
In hotels.
In hotels. And let me share with you, each one of them tells that even when Modi became CM, he didn't forget them. Which means what? Which means that some of these great people don't forget their childhood friends or maybe adulthood friends. Coming back to Krishna, he is king of Dwarka. He is king of Dwarka. And remember, Once he left Vrindavan and Mathura, he has never met Radha again, never ever. He says, I can't go and see Radha, now in this age, I can't go. He sends one of his friends and he says, you go and meet Radha and tell her that I am fine and come back and tell me how Radha is now. And also tell me about friends. He hasn't forgotten his friends even when he has become the king. And all of us remember what happened with Sudama. When he was the king and Sudama was a beggar, in a way, a very poor person, that he didn't have anything to serve for his family, he doesn't forget Sudama. He cleanses his feet, Sudama's feet. That was his greatness. He can come down to play with anyone. That was I think that is a greatness of such people. They don't
Sanjay,
differentiate.
Sanjay, if I may add on, because we have other characters also to do, if I may add on, you have another story or something? Can I just add on?
No, please go ahead. Please
so,
go ahead.
Sanjay, there's something interesting, and for all the audience members, he was one person who was able to, that's another concept that I'd like to draw your attention to. Two concepts that I would like to draw your attention to. One is sense making. So, he was one person who was able to make sense in whatever he did and whatever he said. At that time, it may not have made sense, but later on, it will make sense. For instance, there's that story where Arjun starts getting too big for his boots. So Krishna says, Mahabharata is over, and he says, go and get I'm really remembering my gopis. So Arjun says, do you want me to get the gopis? So he says, yeah, I do so want. And Arjun goes to get the gopis. And when he's coming back on the way, he meets a lot of charvahas, who are the shepherds. So the gopis are very pretty, being gopis of Krishna, they are expected to be pretty. So all the charvahas run after the gopis. And the gopis, looking at these people coming towards them, they jump into a pond or a well, which is known as Gopi Talab. And Arjun is badly defeated by these shepherds, and he comes back to Krishna and he says, this is what happened. So Krishna says, I knew this is what would happen. So he says, then why did you send me? So in short, he says, you were getting too big for your boots, man. Your ego had kind of broken the ceiling. So the point is, he was one person who knew. He had foresight, he had vision, he could make sense. Remember one thing, where leaders are concerned, they're grappling with two things. One is power, one is trust. It's their power of yesterday which helps them operate today. But it's the trust that they develop amongst the people which helps them operate the next day. So keep that in mind, because that is clearly what Krishna did. But probably one of the reasons as to why the Pandus were able to become successful was because of Krishna. The poor Kauravas didn't have anyone who could be referred to as a master strategist or who would fall in the same line as Krishna was. So Sanjay seems to be nodding his head. He doesn't agree. So Sanjay, you have any other comments?
Yes, Asha. Kauravas had Shakuni. Kauravas had Shakuni. Asha, if Krishna appreciated someone amongst Kauravas, it was Shakuni. Both were nearly, of course, Krishna is far above, but if someone has to be compared for intelligence, it was Shakuni. If someone has to be compared for the planning, it was Shakuni. Actually, very interestingly, Asha, Shakuni never wanted a war. He never wanted a war. At no point of time he forced or he advised Duryodhana to go for a war. For him, if you can get something by deceit, why go for war? And he had so much of confidence on his, what you call pasas, on his dice game, that he told Duryodhana, I will get anything and everything for you. That was, so let me tell you about Shakuni, Asha. And that also would bring to all of us one more story of Bhishma, which is not very popular. Gandhari was also won over by Bhishma for Dhritarashtra. There are multiple stories there, and one of the story is that It was Bhishma who went to Gandhar, attacked Gandhar to, so that Dhritarashtra could marry Gandhari. That is one story. But what Kaurava said was that there was a lot of adharam in Gandhar. Means Kaurava saying a lot of adharam in Gandhar itself is questionable, but okay. I am assuming that it was during father of Dhritarashtra's time that this may have happened. Therefore, I am okay with that. But the story is that Shakuni also has 100 brothers, like Kaurava's 100 brothers, and they are either killed or imprisoned. And they are given 1 grain of rice every day to eat. 1 grain of rice. Shakuni is the most brilliant person. All of them save that 1 grain of rice for Shakuni so that Shakuni is alive. And before dying, the father of Shakuni, Sabal, he requests Dhritarashtra that now please free my son. And this son has taken a vow to ensure that Hastinapur will be disseminated. Actually, very interestingly to tell you, and I was watching this very interestingly, there is a serial that comes called Dharmkshetra, and in that, now it may be part of some stories may not be part. Vidur is asked, who told you that in that Lakshagre Pandavas will be put on fire? How did you know? And Vidur says, none other than Shakuni. Shakuni had given a hint that in Lakshagre Pandavas will be put on fire. Why? If Shakuni wanted, Pandavas would have got killed there and then itself. He didn't want that. What he wanted was the fire to burn in the heart of Pandavas so that Kauravas and Pandavas fight and they get decimated. See his planning, how long, how many years in advance he had planned all situations such that it's not that only Pandavas should get decimated or Kauravas. He wanted both the clans, the entire clan of Bhishma to get decimated. That was the intelligence. Only thing is, he used it in wrong direction. That I agree. Krishna was with the righteousness and Shakuni was with the wrong side. I would agree, I would accept that. See the...
Sanjay, I would like to add on something.
One more, Asha, just 1 second. Shakuni says, if you remember, no one took a vow to kill Shakuni in entire Mahabharata. No one said, Shakuni, I will kill you. He was such a nice person. He never angered anyone in face to face. Yeah, Asha, please go ahead.
Thank you, Sanjay. Sanjay, where Shakuni is concerned, I'd just like to share this with everyone. And, one of the reasons why I feel very proud about this character is Oriya literature. And my guide, my PhD guide, he's done a lot of work on Shakuni. In fact, that was the first time when I got to know about the positives about Shakuni. Because, the perceptions that are created by society, right, that you're trying to win over someone only by a game of dice. But if you go deeper into it and you see whatever he did it all for Kauravas. He was also self-sacrificing. He didn't do anything for himself, just like Krishna. Krishna didn't do anything for himself. Whatever he did, it was for the Pandus. But what is it that makes Shakuni negative, and what is it that keeps Krishna positive? So that is also something that we may want to debate upon. Krishna, of course, is Lord Vishnu. So we all know about that. So when we study, Krishna has been taken up to the level of God, but Shakuni has not been taken up to the level of God because he was not an avatar. But what Sanjay has been talking about so far, all the merits which were there, his intelligence, his vision, what we talk is what is critical and what makes Shakuni worth study where leadership is concerned. But I'd just like to add something to what Sanjay also talked about. This is, by Jolly, his performance. All the time when you talk about leaders, what are we talking about? Their performance, their skill set, their competency. And by Jolly, this guy had it. And the way in which he would be able to communicate and get people to his side is exactly what is required in today's world. When you take a look at COVID-19, where people are kind of cajoling you into going in for a salary cut. They do it in a very nice kind of way, which makes you feel, well, I am contributing. You are contributing, but at that time, you don't have a heavy heart. Later on, when you rationalize, you say, God, even my salary has been cut. So let's proceed with Shakuni. So, a man who wants to see, what is important for us is to understand it's not that he had his back towards us as an audience, but if he has to lead the orchestra, and in this case it was the Kauravas, he has to turn his back to us. And when we say he has to turn his back to us, the society, which means he's not probably following the society, he's gambling, which is not viewed in a very positive way. But where Yudhishthira is concerned, it's a wow. But before we get on to that, where even the Kauravas are concerned, right? There was one strong character. And I just like to talk a little about this strong character and then give the floor to Sanjay. And I love this character. I really do love this character, and that is Karn. There are times when you think, here is a man who's been in search of identity. All throughout his life, he keeps saying, who am I? Who am I? He's a Kshatriya who's been brought up by the Sooth family. He knows he is not a Sooth, doesn't belong to that clan, and he's in search of his identity. Look at the qualities that that man possesses. He's Danveer. He rips his Kavach Kundal and he gives it to the Lord. Even the gods are afraid of him and his competency. All throughout life, whatever he did, he kept sacrificing. And, everyone kept shunning him. He has been criticized, and which person does not make a mistake in his or her life? He's been criticized because he called, and of course, it was a jolly big mistake when Draupadi, the Chir Haran of Draupadi, got started because of what he said. But take a look at throughout his life, it's full of sacrifices, which means you do 100 good things, but one wrong in your life is going to pull you down. Everyone, left, right, center, kept giving him shots. Parshuram said, when you need your vidya the most, you will forget about it. The last episode, where his wheel gets stuck. I mean, it's really pathetic. It almost brings tears to my eyes every time I think about it. But before we get on to that story, there's another story which talks about his competency. The war is going on. Karn is on one side and Arjun is on the other. Every time Karn shoots, Arjun's Rath goes back by 2 or 3 feet, but every time Arjun shoots, his Rath goes back by 10 or 15 feet. But Krishna looks at Arjun, and every time Karn shoots, he says, by jolly buddy, what a good shot. Finally, Arjun can bear it no longer. And he asks Krishna, and that's the time when Krishna says, you have monkey god on top of your chariot, snake god on the wheels of your chariot, and God himself in your chariot, and if he's still able to push your chariot back, by jolly, this man has competency. But towards the end, he's caught up. He's caught up, and Arjun mercilessly kills him at the behest of Lord Krishna. There goes a very interesting story, but we'll talk about the story later on, because I think Sanjay also has something to add where Krishna is concerned, where Karna is concerned.
Yes, yes, Asha. So, when Karna is asked by Duryodhan, why did you give your Kavach Kundal away? Why did you do that? Because, I was dependent on you. He said, I have taken a vow that I will donate to a Brahmin every day if I see in morning. If I had reneged on that vow, then I would at some point of time think of ranging from the another promise that I have made, that I will stand by you for my life. So, so he says, if I break one promise, I may break others also. But there is one more interesting dimension to that. When Krishna is giving Gyan to Arjun, which is Gita Sar, Arjun is trying to understand bhakti. And Arjun says, bhakti is there from a wife to husband. I don't know why it's other way around, but that was the time. So bhakti is from a wife to husband, from a son to father, from a student to a teacher. Isn't that also bhakti? And that also should make us great. He says, yes, it's true, but it is also important whom you worship. That's important. It's not that if you are bhakt, you have reached the purity, you have reached the extreme. No. Whom are you worshipping is important. And out of the names he takes name of Karna specifically. He's a nice man, but he has blind trust in Duryodhana. That is what will take him down. Therefore, what I learned from that is, while it is important for you to have friends and teachers and guides, it's also important to choose the right ones. Karna made a blunder there. He chose the wrong one. Why did he chose the wrong one? Because the way in the circumstances he had his childhood, Duryodhana was the first one to and the only one to offer hand of friendship. He accepted that. And that was a time after which he was always dedicated to Duryodhana. He didn't know how to come out of that. The way Yudhishthira didn't know how to come out of standard operating procedures of Dharma, Karna also didn't know how to come out of Dharma. Remember, only two people knew Asha. Krishna knew how to come out, and Shakuni knew how to come out.
Sanjay, why this happened? Because both of them carried with them the exit card. What is this exit card? The exit card you must keep with you all the time, because what leadership is all about. Not subscribing to what the other person is saying. When you feel things are not right, just flash your exit card and move out. So both Krishna and Shakuni carried their exit cards with them. And whenever they felt that things were not moving just the right way, they just flashed the exit card and they were over with that particular situation. So even where Karna is concerned, if I may add on, he was in search of identity, and when you're in search of identity, you really don't know what your duty is, what your roles are, what is the context in which you need to plug your duty. Now, there's another character, but let us take a look at Karna. Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living for a man. Not for a minute did Karna pause to examine his life in retrospect. To think what are the things that he did right, to think how should he now be proceeding. You need to reinvent yourself. That is critical. Now, the entire discussion would be incomplete without a discussion on what exactly is smriti, what exactly is consciousness. So the last character for the day is Ashwathama. You might as well ask me, why this stupid man? I'm a little worried in case anyone decides to go to the Himalayas and there's a man roaming around with a gaping wound in the center of his forehead. That's your Ashwathama for you. He had been cursed by Krishna. Here is a man who's never going to die. But take a look at what happened. He was born to Duryodhana. And, it is said, I don't know how far it's true, that Arjun many times suspected that he had more knowledge than probably Arjun had, and he felt that Duryodhana had kind of given him more knowledge because he was his son, but Ashwathama was not satisfied with that. He wanted to be a Kshatriya, he wanted to lead the army, he wanted to be anointed as the general. This kind of dissatisfaction, he lost his consciousness, he lost, smriti is the word. The minute we start moving forward towards higher achievement without really sensing our own competency, it is important that we keep this character in mind, right? What does he do in this desire to be anointed as a king? All of us want to be seen CEOs, in our desire to become CEOs, we just start moving in whichever direction we want. A leader should be real, innovative, whole. Ashwatthama was not whole. Ashwatthama seemed to be not even unreal. I would say he had a surreal kind of desire to be the general. Duryodhana is hiding. Duryodhana is hiding in one of those, wells, and he goes and he's screaming his lungs out to be anointed as the general of the army. The Pandavas hear about it and they come and they kill Duryodhana. They find Duryodhana. He does things which are not right. At night he goes and he sets the entire Pandav camp on fire. Kills the next generation of the Pandavas. And he knows that the Pandavas are going to follow him and not spare him. He rushes to Vyasa's kutir. He's good with his arms. He takes out his Narayan Shastra. Brahmastra. He takes out his Brahmastra. On the other side, Arjun also takes out his Brahmastra because Arjun and Krishna follow him. The two asks are about to collide when Vyasa comes in between and he says the whole world is going to be destroyed. Take back your weapons. Arjun knows how to do it. He takes it back. This fool doesn't know how to take it back. He directs it. Take a look at the vengeance in him. He directs it towards Uttara's womb. Krishna enters the womb and saves the child. And that's the time when he curses him. That you are going to move around with this gaping wound in the center of your forehead. The point as to why we wanted to discuss this character is because one also needs to know where leadership is concerned, what not to do. Why is it that we need to follow our smriti? Don't ever lose your smriti or lose your consciousness. Because if you lose your consciousness, you have lost your identity. If you've lost your identity, you've lost your sense of what is right, what is wrong. It's a combination of strategy and character. If you have to be without one, be without strategy. So, Sanjay, would you like to take this priority of a leader?
Yes. So if you see and if you compare Krishna and Shakuni, question number 1, for self or for others? Krishna was not fighting this war for himself. Shakuni was fighting for himself. It was his anger. That's what he was fighting for. And many times if you ask who was the cause of Mahabharata, people may blame Duryodhana. But somewhere at the back of Duryodhana was Shakuni, who was inciting that expectation from the childhood in the mind of Duryodhana. Today or tomorrow? That's very important question. If I translate this question from the verse of Gita, and all of us are familiar of that, when we say karmanne vadikaraste ma phaleshu kadach. It said that Krishna said this to Arjuna, but even before the war. So it so happens Abhimanyu is getting married, and the mother of Uttara, which means queen of Virat, she says, your son will become a Chakravarti Samrat. And Draupadi says, why should Abhimanyu's son should become Chakravarti Samrat? Why not my son? Actually, the lady, the queen, maybe wants to ensure to make jealous of Draupadi. And it looks as if Draupadi is getting jealous. But she asks Krishna, tell me, Krishna, what is going to happen? Because why would son of Abhimanyu become Chakravarti Samrat? Why not 5 of them, my sons? Why not Abhimanyu himself? Tell me who will be alive and who will be dead. And Krishna tells Draupadi. And Krishna says, it is for tomorrow that you have to sacrifice today. And then they narrate the entire childhood of Krishna. And Krishna says, when I was about to kill Kans, my parents, their neck was under the dragon. They could have been killed. But I didn't bring to my mind what will happen to my parents. Had I brought that to my mind, I wouldn't be able to kill Kans. So if you're doing a task, do that. Don't worry too much about what is going to happen. And therefore, this question, today or tomorrow. The third important issue of rules and outcomes, and that's where I brought in standard operating procedures or results, ends or means. That's what is very important. And Krishna says, no, if you see again, Krishna and Shakuni, both of them can bend rules as and when needed. But if that is the case, then what is the difference? What makes Krishna great? Asha, that is boundary conditions. Boundary conditions, how far would you go? You know, when you have rules and we are willing to break the rules, how far would you go? Krishna says we make rules, but sometimes we get bound by rules. That should not happen. We should not govern ourselves by rules only. Rules are for the betterment of people. When betterment of people is not the result of the rules, it's better to break the rules. And he also says, when you have to grow new crop, you have to burn all the crop, and therefore he's happy to ensure that all Kauravas and remaining Pandavas get killed, so that the new era can begin. Idealistic or pragmatic? Idealistic as Yudhishthira, pragmatic as Krishna. If you have to be leader, you have to make a choice. Too ideal a leader may have its own problems, because a leader should change according to situations. That's what I understand from Mahabharata and what I understand from Krishna. Be ready to change according to the situations without forgetting your boundary conditions, remember, without forgetting your boundary conditions. De facto or de jure, that is also very important for a leader. Your power comes from your people, or your power comes from the top, from where your power is coming. Power of Yudhishthira, power of Krishna comes from the love of the people. Power of Duryodhana comes from Bhishma. Where is your power coming from? Without Bhishma, without Karna, Duryodhana is nothing. Pandavas are, for whatever they are because of their own power, not because of power of someone else. And therefore, it's very important that a leader knows why is a leader. Otherwise, there won't be any difference between a leader and a manager. Asha, to you.
Thank you so much, Sanjay. So just a couple of things we'd like to add on before we leave the floor to you. So let's take a look at the leadership matrix. And, because anything that you do with academics, right, you have to have these kind of matrices. So on one of the axis, we have concern for people, and on the other axis, we have concern for task. Now, it's very interesting when you talk about ends and means, which was also proposed by Machiavelli, and even Kant talked about the categorical imperative. You would notice Yudhishthir is only very high on concern for people, but concern for tasks, I'm not so sure whether he was all that high. Krishna is one person who's able to sort out this kind of conflict between concern for people, concern for tasks, ends and means the conflict. Who is going to be instrumental in getting you to achieve something? There's a very interesting story. There was a leader once who looks at a person in front of him, and when this person goes to him, he says, there's some ink on the table. Can you clean it up? So the subordinate picks up a cloth and tries to wipe it and clean it. And he says, sir, it's done. And he looks at that cloth in his hand and he says, are you sure? So the point is, when you remove a certain context to purify it, are you sullying another context, dirtying another context? Remember, where life is concerned, these contradictions are going to be there. What you have to be sure of is the dirt will shift, uncertainties will be there, complexities will be there. When you clear something, what is the extent of disarray that you bring about in the other situation? This is a choice, and life is all about choices. Now, if you take a look at Bhishma, Shakuni, Karn, they were all closer to concern for task, and Ashwatthama, of course, was very low on concern for people and concern for tasks. Now, if we take a look at the 6R model of leadership, it's important for us to revive. It's important for us to re-examine, reflect. It's important for us to reinvent, rejoice when we've been able to do things instead of just getting caught in the mundane activities of life. It's important for us to develop resilience. So anything that you're thinking is already there in Mahabharata. So the last slide that I'd like to share with you all, and then we can close today's session, some key takeaways. Life is full of uncertainties. Make compromises and be flexible. Smriti leads to consciousness, to identity and performance of duty. Loss of smriti and consciousness of right and wrong can lead you to your doom. Search for your identity. Look for meaning in life. Become a sense maker. A dash of pragmatism mixed with principles is the final key to success. Only focusing on principles doesn't really help you achieve anything in life. So with that, we close with our presentation. We are left with 9 minutes flat. Any questions that you have, we'd be more than happy to welcome the questions. We budgeted 15 minutes, but I'm sorry, now we are only left with 9 minutes to be precise.
It's because of me, Asha.
Okay, yeah. We'll talk about it once the session's over, yeah.
Ma'am and sir, this was a really wonderful presentation. One of the questions that comes to our mind, my mind rather, being a teacher, is the role of Dronacharya in terms of the entire epic. Could you elaborate a little bit on that aspect, sir or ma'am, anyone? Because as a teacher,
should I be? Who's speaking, please? I can't
ma'am,
see you.
This is Dr. Shriram Purankar.
Shriram, come forward, yeah. Eye contact होना चाहिए, तब तो बात करेंगे. See, when Dronacharya is, there. So, Shriram, it's very interesting that Dronacharya is concerned. He was a kind of person who knew what is he supposed to be doing and how is he supposed to be proceeding. But like Bhishma, he was caught up with the Hastinapur, clan, right? And he had to, because he was a person who had been hired by the Hastinapur, so he had to stay with the Kauravas. He couldn't move out and, be on the side of the Pandavas. So he knew Arjun was there. There's a very interesting story which was there in Meera Oberoy's Mahabharata. It says, Abhimanyu. So where Abhimanyu was concerned, he knew how to enter into the Chakravyuh, but he didn't know how to come out. So when he entered into the Chakravyuh and he was able to kill many of the Kaurava people, it is said that Dronacharya, when he saw Abhimanyu do that, that's what Meera Oberoi says. He was full of pride. In fact, Duryodhana had to tell him, here you're standing and you're appreciating the feats of this person when you should actually be against him. So, he was a true teacher. He had his favorites, and he also appreciated when it came to something which is really good. So, but then again, when we talk about Mahabharata, there are 2 or 3 things that you have to keep in mind. Your role, your duties, and the context. So one would need to be sure, if this is the context, what is it that I'm going to do? Am I caught up between duties and obligation? Or am I sure of what should be a duty of a teacher and should proceed? Now, when we say that he taught Ashwatthama more, now that is again something that we say, which is related to research. So one is really not sure, because Arjun was always his favorite. Not that Arjun's my favorite, right? I feel that he was offered everything on a golden platter. I would love to discuss Karn, and I would just go on and on and on where Karn is concerned. But Arjun, I felt, had everything given to him on a golden platter. Sanjay has a smile on his face. I'm sure he'd like to add something to it. So remember, there is this, which is the triangle between, it's a triangle between content, role, duties, and responsibilities in the context. So if you're sure of where exactly do you need to pitch, then you can take it forward accordingly, right? Yes. Sanjay, would you like to add on?
Yeah, Asha, two things. Dronacharya, when Draupadi was being disrobed, was about to move out from that court. However, his son, he sides with Duryodhan and he says, I am ashamed to say that Draupadi is my sister. Correct? And because of that, Dronacharya has to come back because Dronacharya, Ashwatthama says something. I'm just, it's moving out of my mind. So, yeah, Dhritarashtra is about to punish Dronacharya. Dhritarashtra says, I will forget it if you promise you will never walk out of this court and you will never leave my side. The point is, look at Bhishma, look at Karna, look at Dronacharya. These people make blind promises without knowing what is going to happen in future, no foresight. Knowing the character of Dhritarashtra, knowing the character of Duryodhan, they should have known what they're going into. And these people throw a bait and they accept it. And if you see Mahabharata, 10 times Bhishma will say, Asambhav, and within 2 minutes he will turn. He will turn because he will be forced to turn. Now coming to Karna and Eklavya, Asha, if you see, there is a story where a dog is barking and Eklavya shoots arrow in the mouth of dog such that it keeps quiet. Karna also, when the time comes, he is not able to stand with dharma. I personally think it's a right of a teacher to identify who is the right student. Because when the tough call comes, student has to make the right choice. A teacher cannot give knowledge to someone who in time of judgment makes a wrong call. You can't punish a dog just because dog is barking. Barking is dog's instinct. Why do you punish just because your teacher is getting disturbed? Not fair.
But he was cursed by Parshuram. Like Karn ke baare mein we'll take it offline, Sanjay. Karn was, given the sharp by Parshuram that when you need your vidya most, you will forget it. The dedication, that he had dedication. We'll discuss it offline because let's take other questions. So, Karn ke baare mein ab kuch nahi kehte. Let's move on to the next question. So, Dronacharya we've answered. In fact, Shriram, I'd just like to add one point. All these Maharathis were there when Draupadi Chirana was happening. Right? Do you think if Bhishma, Pitama, Dronacharya, one of them would have raised their voice at Dhritarashtra, he is small, younger, this next generation would not have stopped. This is the problem when you're bound by societal rules, societal norms, and you don't really cognize what is your duty. What is the context in which you need to operate? What was Bhishma Pitama's role to protect both Pandavas and Kauravas? What was Dhritarashtra's role? His role and duty was to act like a true unbiased king. Dronacharya as a teacher to tell his students, you are doing wrong, buddy, stop the dice game. So these conflicts arise because you're caught up in societal rules and values. So society says, let's gamble. Gamble? Wife is inferior to husband, sell her. No one dares speak in front of the next king. So just keep that in mind. But let's listen to other questions. Right, Shriram, does it answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely, ma'am. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
So, yeah, any other question? Can we quickly get to know if anyone had a leadership trait in mind which we were not able to discuss?
Good morning, Professor.
Hi, Suresh.
Hi. So what I understand,
Suresh, you have to be louder. I'm aging, Suresh.
I understand from Mahabharata is when generals fight, soldiers get killed because of the egos of Kauravas or Pandavas, because Duryodhan felt offended because Draupadi laughed at him. And similarly, because of the scheming of Shekuni, wars happen and the common people suffer. So that has been the case since ages. So that is one point, madam. Second is Professor Sanjay. If you look at strategy, I think Karna was the most powerful leader. He should have allowed Arjuna to kill Duryodhan, and he should have killed Arjun and had a alliance with Krishna. That would have been another end to Mahabharata. So I would like to know.
Krishna came to him. And even Kunti came to Karna at the time, when they saw that it was the war was going to carry on, and Kunti has been looking for identity, and that's the time when Kunti says, you are my son, right? And he says, even at the end of the war, you'll have 5 sons. Either it's me or Arjun who gets killed. So when you talk about, Krishna had come to him and he said, even Draupadi is going to be even your wife. But this guy had morals, That's why I love him.
Yes.
Right, Suresh?
Yes.
Suresh, your conjecture that Karna would have killed Arjun may not have happened. Had Pandavas known, remember, where was the conflict? Conflict was that Duryodhan was conceived before Yudhishthir.
Yes.
Yudhishthir was born before Duryodhan. Therefore, who is elder? That definition itself was, debatable. Had they known that Karna is the eldest child of Kunti, very likely this conflict would not have happened. Very likely because Bhishma did not accept that. Bhishma said all children after marriage are his grandsons, not the one before. But very likely Duryodhan as well as Yudhishthir would have. And Asha and other ladies, pardon me for this, and this is mythology. Actually, Yudhishthir at the end curses Kunti. That why did she hide the fact? Correct? So if that was revealed, possibly Mahabharata wouldn't have happened.
Okay, thank you.
Right? So, Shriram, Renu, thank you so much for inviting us. It was real fun talking to all of you. And I hope there was a value add. And do, in case there's anything, do stay in touch with us. It's going to be fun interacting with you all. Thank you so much for giving us audience.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much, sir. Thanks a lot for a wonderful discourse. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Take care. Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.